July 1954. A hotel room in Tokyo. Two guards stand outside the door. Inside, a man who shouldn't exist. By morning, the room will be empty. The window sealed shut. The door never opened. And the only proof he was ever here will vanish with him. But this story isn't about a man who disappeared. It's about something far more disturbing. What if he was never the one who was lost? Haneda Airport, Tokyo, summer 1954. A well-dressed European businessman steps off a routine flight. He's calm, polite, and carrying a briefcase full of perfectly organized documents: passport, driver's license, business contracts. He speaks fluent French and Japanese. His passport is stamped by customs offices across Asia and Europe. Everything about him is completely ordinary, until one customs officer looks at the man's passport and sees a country that doesn't exist. Taured. The man says he's from Taured. He says it with the same casual confidence you'd say you're from France or Japan. To him, this is not unusual. This is just where he lives. When officials show him a world map and ask him to point to his country, he doesn't hesitate. His finger lands directly on the Principality of Andorra, that tiny nation nestled between France and Spain. But he doesn't call it Andorra. He calls it Taured. And when they tell him Andorra is written on the map, not Taured, something shifts in his expression. Not fear, not anger, confusion. The kind of confusion that comes from realizing something fundamental has broken. He insists Taured has existed for over 1,000 years. He has documentation to prove it. His passport isn't forged. His business contacts in Tokyo are real. Except when officials call the company he's supposed to be meeting, they've never heard of him. The hotel where he claims to have a reservation has no record of his booking. And the bank listed on his financial documents doesn't exist. Now, before you dismiss this as a simple hoax or a case of forged documents, consider this. In 1957, just 3 years after this incident, physicist Hugh Everett proposed the many-worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. The idea that every quantum event creates a branching point, splitting reality into parallel worlds where every possible outcome actually happens. This isn't science fiction. It's a legitimate interpretation of quantum physics, one that physicists like Sean Carroll and Max Tegmark actively defend today. The math doesn't just allow for parallel universes. In some interpretations, it demands them. We're talking about a number of possible parallel realities, estimated at 10 to the power of 500. To put that in perspective, there are roughly 10 to the power of 80 atoms in the entire observable universe. The number of possible realities dwarfs the number of particles that make up everything you've ever seen or touched. In one of those realities, the Principality of Andorra never formed. Instead, a nation called Taured grew in its place. Same mountains, same borders, different name, different history, different people. But here's where the story takes a turn that nobody talks about. We focus so much on the man from Taured being lost in our world, but what if we're asking the wrong question entirely? Think about how fragile national borders really are. Yugoslavia existed for 73 years. Then it didn't. Czechoslovakia split overnight. The Soviet Union, a superpower that controlled half the planet, dissolved in a matter of months. East Germany vanished from maps, while the people who lived there were still alive. If you fell asleep in 1988 and woke up in 1995, you'd find yourself in a world where countries you grew up in simply no longer exist. You'd be a man from Taured. The Mandela effect, that phenomenon where millions of people share identical false memories, suggests this might be more common than we think. Thousands of people distinctly remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. They remember the funeral. They remember the news coverage, but it never happened, at least not in this timeline. What if the man from Taured wasn't confused because he was in the wrong world? What if he was confused because the world around him had shifted and he was the only one who noticed? Japanese immigration officials, unable to determine who this man really was, placed him in a hotel room near the airport. 2 guards were posted outside his door. His passport and documents were locked in a secure office. The next morning, both guards confirmed no one had entered or exited the room. But when they opened the door, the room was empty. The windows were sealed shut, several stories above the ground. There was no second exit. The man was simply gone. And when officials went to retrieve his passport and documents from the locked office, those were gone too. Every trace that this man had ever existed had been erased. Now here's the question that should keep you up tonight. How do you prove where you're from? Really prove it. You have a passport. The man from Taured had one too. You have a birth certificate, a social security number, a digital footprint across 100 databases. But all of those are just pieces of paper and strings of code that exist because a government says they're real. And governments, as we've seen, come and go like seasons. If you walked into an airport tomorrow and the customs officer told you your country doesn't exist, what would you do? You'd argue. You'd pull up a map on your phone. You'd call someone back home. But what if the map showed a different name? What if no one answered the phone? What if every thread connecting you to your identity just unraveled? The man from Taured lived that nightmare. For one day, he was the most documented citizen of a country that no one else could see. Some historians believe this story is nothing more than an urban legend, embellished over decades. And maybe they're right. But the reason it endures, the reason you're watching this right now, is because it touches something real. The terrifying possibility that reality is not as solid as we pretend it is. That the ground beneath your feet, the country on your passport, the name of the street you grew up on, could all be one quantum fluctuation away from never having existed at all. The man from Taured either proved that parallel universes are real, or he proved something even more unsettling, that a single human being can be erased from existence without leaving a trace. So here's what I want you to answer in the comments. If you woke up tomorrow in a world that was almost identical to this one, but with one impossible difference, how long would it take you to notice? And would anyone believe you when you did? Drop Taured in the comments if you think he crossed from another reality. Drop erased if you think something else entirely happened to him. I'll pin the most thought-provoking answer.